Okay.
It is lovely to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
You and I go back some ways.
We do. It's been, it's 20 years this year.
So you and I spoke at the University of Toronto with a ex-pornography performer who will go unnamed and pornography producer. And we spoke about the evil of pornography to this packed audience. Thank you for inviting us out.
You're very welcome.
Remember, this is how long ago was that? 12 years?
That was in 2012, so it'd be 11 years now.
Had a fella come up to me and he said, "Hey, thanks a lot. I was going to go home and watch porn tonight and you've ruined that." And we're like, yes.
Success, yeah.
The other thing I remember about you is just you had a cornucopia of relics, and we were driving with you somewhere and you must have had a relic in the front by the stick shift or whatever, and you would take it out and you would bless pornography stores and abortion things as right. Do you remember? Do you still do that?
Yep. So that
those are two of my memories of you. Yeah.
So that's a relic of the tomb of the Holy Innocents in Bethlehem. So especially abortion clinics, I like to bless them with the relic of the Holy Innocents. Yeah.
So back then you weren't an exorcist.
When I was in Toronto, I was. So I was not an exorcist for Toronto. I started in Houston. I started my priesthood there, and in fact, I started as a deacon there and in Houston. And it was as a deacon that I was thrown into the spiritual warfare thing, because the parish at which I was assigned, it housed the all of the exorcism and deliverance ministry were done by the clergy there. So any time a case came to a pastor, the pastor kicked it up to the archdiocese, and then the archdiocese kicked it down to that parish. And so it would be divided up by us. So even as a deacon, I was, I remember they were so busy, the priests, dealing with possessions, dealing with people who were badly demonized, that one day, I remember one was just exhausted. He was coming out from a session, and then he had one that was about to start shortly afterwards. And a call came in for a house that was infested. It was demonized. And then he just looked at me and he said, "Demon." Deacon?
He didn't like you.
He said, "Deacon, go get rid of the devil." And so I had zero training, and I absolutely would never recommend that for being that being the practice. People need training for this.
But you were being obedient to your priest? Well,
the thing is, I understood the where he was at. I understood the exhaustion. And the thing is, I wasn't fearful. I had a principle in mind, and I don't know where I picked this up. I don't know if I was taught or if it just was kind of the Lord put it in me. If the devil is in a place, in a person, wherever he is there for a reason. He has been given rights, and your job as the agent of the church to get rid of him is to help whoever establish those rights or gave him those rights to take them back. And then once the rights are gone, the devil has to leave. So it's a very legal, juridical process.
I'd love to hear about this first experience of yours, but for those in the audience, what does it mean for a house to be infested or demonized?
So this was a lady who she had lost her own home. It had burned down, and so she moved in with her uncle, and her uncle was away. He was out of the country for a couple of years on business. He made his home available to her. And what happened? Just the first thing that she had mentioned was wherever she was in the house, there was a sense of being watched, that she couldn't see anything watching her, but there was just this ominous sensation of being watched. And it was always intense, but it would get more and more intense at different random parts of the day. Objects would fly off the shelves by themselves. Something that was sitting, safely on a counter would just drop onto the floor and shatter. The worst thing, she said, was a music box that was in her uncle's bedroom on the dresser that would chime at random
Music
parts.
boxes are creepy enough.
They're creepy enough.
Let alone having a demon do it.
Right. Right.
All
and
right,
so, and
so-
it gets worse.
Keep going.
Because
Yeah.
so it would just go off at random times. Now by this point, she had been there several months. So it had a key winder. Nobody was winding this box. She went to try to see, are there batteries to it, or is it somehow receiving electrical power? She could not lift it up off the dresser. It was on 4 little small pedestal legs, but it wouldn't budge. So she removed the key so that, she thought somehow is this accidentally through the movement of the house or something being wound. She got rid of the key. It changed nothing. And then there was just games where she would be in the house and like, wait a minute, I haven't heard the music box go off all day. Maybe it's over. And then at that moment, the music box would go off. So it's, is it the case? People ask all the time, can the devil read your mind? Can he read your thoughts? No. But he's an excellent observer. So he can deduce what you're probably thinking by your body language.
So when these certain things, is this what you had heard, or is this what you then experienced when you went there? Because I imagine you have people calling you saying they feel like they're being watched. You're like, all right, we'll just have an aspirin and go to bed.
So this particular lady...
Try not to swing, sorry, or else the camera will not pick up on you.
So this particular lady, she was very well spoken. She was educated. She didn't seem to be the kind of person that was given to the imagination. But that isn't saying anything, because you can have really, really educated people, well-spoken people, articulate people who are given to the imagination. What she had said, and again, I was kind of brand new at this. Well, not kind of. I was brand new at it. What she said was just, there was a convincingness to it. Like I looked at her face, and she's not lying. And the first thing she said was, maybe I'm just crazy. Mm-hmm. And somebody who is crazy is never going to say that. I mean, in the sense of people with mental illness have a particular perspective, and that explanation is never part of their explanation of what is going on, by and large. So this is what I count. But so the first, she questioned her own sanity. And so, again, I am not experienced at all at this point. So she could have said anything. But in terms of her face, there was something there that seemed genuine. And you know what? Hey, I just want to go check this out.
Yeah.
So I grabbed what I needed to do, a house blessing. I grabbed, and that's all I was doing, right? I was blessing a house, and I was not a deputed exorcist at that point. So I went to her house, and she opened the door, and I entered in. And as soon as I did so, there was a ceiling fan that was still, and it started spinning very, very slowly. Like extremely slow. Fast enough that you could see it spinning, but slow enough that like there's no setting that would cause that. Like, it'd be the most useless, pointless setting. And then all of a sudden, like spinning so fast, like airplane propeller fast.
Wow.
Where it was a blur, to say the least. The noise in the room picked up and correct. It was an airplane propeller for all intents and purposes. Everything that wasn't extremely heavy was blowing around the room.
How was the woman reacting as this happened when you entered?
She was in shock because it had never acted that violently. It was up to that point games, teasing, haunting kind of stuff. Okay. This was a lot more action than anything else. Right? Before it was sounds and feelings. Now it was a manifestation of power, if you will. And so, gosh, she I remember her gasping, and at that point I thought, okay, this is great, because hey, the devil's here. And so
she probably felt relief too, knowing she wasn't crazy. If you're encountering this,
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did. And I just went into mode, okay, I'm going to go to that counter over there, and I'm going to make holy water.
Were you nervous, this being your first encounter?
No, maybe that's a gift. Like I don't have a fear of evil. I'm a convert from atheism. So my fear is being separated from God. That's my fear. I don't have any other fear. So when you're encountering the devil, you're encountering a loser. He's already lost. And now, that being said, the devil is not nothing. He is dangerous. Next to God, he's nothing. But but
next to you,
well,
maybe?
he is dangerous and needs a certain respect, a certain difference. Why? Well, because he can hurt people. And you cannot act flippantly around the devil. He will react. He will react, and frankly, God will give him permission to react. God will allow him to manifest his power if you yourself exceed where you should be standing. Right? God will allow the devil to give you a smack if you need it, and to go back into the place where you belong. Kind of to recognize your own smallness too. That the battle at the end of the day, the battle in exorcism, it's God's battle. God is the real exorcist. All of us are just his agents. Right? He's the one that drives the devil out. It's never really about us. So if any of us, if we die today, well, the church raises up another one tomorrow. Big.
So you went over to the kitchen counter.
So went over to the kitchen counter, made holy water. It was in the process of making that holy water that the music box goes off. And that's when, she said, there, that's what I was telling you about. I thought, okay, no problem. We'll take care of it. So I did a blessing of the place. And in this blessing, I asked God to come in and take away any and every evil that is there. And I started at a corner of the first floor, went, sprinkled holy water all throughout, went up to the second floor, did all the different rooms there, and I saved her uncle's room as the last one. And when I entered in that one, so sure enough, there was the music box and it's chiming away. And I put down the container with the holy water, the holy water pail, if you will. And I reached down to pick up this music box, and I pick it up, no problem. And then, she lets out another gasp, that she was never able to do that. But I picked it up, no problem. But as soon as my hands touched it, it stopped chiming. There was no chime whatsoever from it. I opened it up. There was nothing inside this music box. There were no mechanical parts. There were no gears. There was no chiming mechanism. It was an empty box, nor was there ever anything in it. Like there was never something that was in it that was taken out, where you can see screw marks or glue marks, screw holes or that kind of thing. I could see the keyhole. I could see where it was a brass keyhole where the key would go in, but the key itself would go into nothing.
So was it then just a box that she thought was a music box?
It looked like a music box,
but nothing inside.
Perfectly from the exterior. And inside there was nothing. Oh, inside it was a music box, but the shell.
I see.
There were no mechanical parts that you would typically find within one. And it stopped chiming, but I hit it with holy water anyway, and it never chimed again. And so she was, kind of free of harassment. So whatever was going on in that house.
Why wouldn't she get out of that house?
She had nowhere to go. Right? Her house had burnt down, and so there was a bit of a financial precariousness that she was in, and God bless her, she stuck it out. And that, I certainly, I don't mean this pejoratively. I don't mean this to belittle, but that kind of thing is hard for a woman. Right? It's hard for a woman to be alone in a situation like that. With that teasing that is going on, and the devil just craves that, right? He goes for somebody who is just vulnerable, and she was, right? She had been through a lot. She had been through a lot emotionally and financially, and so she was just grateful to get this act of kindness from a family member. Now, the irony is, whatever was in that house was in there because of that family member. So she inherited it. So it was there from day one. Now, the thing is, I don't have the authority to take to remove the devil from anybody's house. Nobody in the church has the authority to just kick out the devil. If you, in your place, are giving the devil a home, if you want him there, what right do I have to kick him out? Right? It's your place. So this house was not her house. So, but the one thing she said to me that really made everything, it put everything in a position where, for all intents and purposes, it became her place. Her uncle said to her, "This is your home. Treat this as your home." Well, then that's it. Then he's just given her legal authority to evict whatever evil is there.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, you said you're an atheist, you're a convert. So I know you believed in God and the demonic, and I know you said you weren't frightened. But I mean, what is that experience like? I mean, it must, coming back and saying, did you come back and report all of this to the priest? Did it increase your faith, knowing that, okay, this is real, this Jesus thing, and I knew it was real, but now I've just encountered something that's not explainable naturally.
Did it increase my faith? In truth, I don't think it did, because it didn't need to happen, and I already believed. Like the grace of belief that I received from the Lord was such that this didn't add anything to it. But what it did do to me was make me glad that I was able to help somebody, and you feel really good about that, right? You were able to kick a bully off, and kick him, and send him somewhere where he's not bothering this person anymore.
So did you relay all this to the priest who sent you?
I did, and of course, and God bless them. They were all so tired that they're great. Yeah. Tomorrow we'll get another one for you.
So
they had a lot.
This is quite mundane for them, these sorts of experiences.
You know what, Matt? It becomes mundane, right? When it's your job, it becomes mundane, right? You're living in the world, and you have one foot in the supernatural that is manifesting within the natural, and so it becomes mundane. And the odd, as an exorcist, what happens in this, what happens most often is people want to talk about the manifestations, right? And then I was sitting in my living room and this happened. And at a certain, all I need is 2 or 3. Okay. And, I want to now go into, what did you do? What are the rights that are here? I want to move on to the why.
I see.
Right?
Yeah, because they're probably just trying to grasp the fact that something unimaginable is happening.
Right.
And they want to process that.
They want to process
and you want to just get the demon out.
And they want to convince you that they're not crazy.
Yeah.
And okay, that's fine. I don't want to hear, I don't need to hear about any more manifestations. I want to now get them to stop. So we and there are ways that you cross-examine people to try to find out what the possible entry points may have been.
I just want to pause here a moment, because I imagine a lot of people would say something like, why not videotape this? Wouldn't that give proof of Christianity? Like, have someone come in behind you.
It gives nothing.
Well, maybe you think it'll give nothing, but I imagine there's some people out there like, dude, if I could see this stuff happen, it would do something for me.
No.
So why aren't you filming it?
No, it wouldn't. Because Hollywood, those are called special effects, right? So that doesn't eliminate that possibility, right? Martins creates his own special effects, right? So that's one, right? 2 is the fact that you're invading somebody's privacy when you do that, right? Like if you all of a sudden had an infestation in your home, right? So let's say a variety of phenomena are happening, and we can just fill in the blanks of what those are, but your life becomes a living hell, right? You wake up with scratches on your body, your kids. And if you're being attacked, your kids are being attacked 10 times more, because the devil is going to go after what you love the most. And, so then all of a sudden, you call up Father Martins or whatever exorcist, and he shows up with a camera crew. How are you going to feel about that?
But there's got to be at least one person who would say, no, I want the truth of this to be known.
Oh, they do.
So bring their phone with you.
I automatically don't trust those people, because what kind of fame are you looking for? I'm not going to give you that audience. I'm not going to be the vehicle that gives you a notoriety for this. You're coming to me for help in dealing with a spiritual problem. As long as you cooperate with me in doing it the way it needs to be done, I'm your best friend. As soon as it veers from that, hey, you know, sorry it didn't work out. God bless you.
Can you tell us an experience of somebody who's made contact with you and they were either lying or had mental problems such that there was no...
Oh, gosh. Well...
Is this a frequent occurrence or is it more likely to be the other?
6 out of 10
false.
Are false. And they're usually false because of mental illness. Sometimes they're false because maybe it's mental illness as well, but they know they're lying, but they just love attention. They just love being questioned and being doted on and being asked, you know, being given space and time to give an answer for something, and they're not interrupted, and everybody is keenly listening to them. And for some people, that it just makes them feel really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of lonely people who want attention.
A lot of lonely people, and
hard to fault them in one way, isn't it?
In a sense, in a sense. It's easy to get mad at them, though,
when
they're wasting your time, right?
That's right, yeah.
Because, you know, I remember when I was, you know, in my heaviest days of working in this ministry, you know, you've got stacks of people requesting to see you, and you have time for maybe 1/3 of that.
I see, yeah.
Right? So you've got to just whittle through.
I can see why it would be annoying.
You can only help the helpable. So if they're not at a place, there might be genuine diabolical phenomena happening there. But if they themselves are not at that point where they're ready to do things your way, you know, which is God's way, when they think, well, you know, what I'd like you to do, Father, is I want you to do this. No, I am not here for you to tell me what to do. You're asking me for help, right? and you're going to accept the help I give you. And if that's not acceptable to you, then I'm sorry. Because I'm if you knew how to undo this, then you would have done so, right? So the fact that you have me here, you are not here to give me instructions. You are here to follow my directions. And so that happens a lot. It happens a lot. And why does it happen a lot? Because people generally have done something in their moral life that they're not ready to give up, or they're ashamed to admit. And so they want you... They don't want the messiness to come out. They don't want the genie to come out of the bottle, so to speak, right? The secret can lay a secret. You just come in here and sprinkle your magic church stuff, your holy water, your whatever, and just, you know, bless the place with a relic, and that should be good. You know, then neither one of us will be late for dinner in our respective homes, kind of thing. Wow. It happens.
I would not be having that attitude if stuff started taking place in my house like you're talking about.
And that's it. Yeah. But 6 out of 10 people. So those are my loose statistics, but all of my colleagues, that pretty well jives with them. Then out of the 4 out of 10 that are genuine cases where diabolical phenomena is happening, 6 out of 10 of those are not helpable because they're just not ready. They're not ready to give up what the devil gave them.
Would you share one experience of that with us?
Sure. So there was a woman that I knew who the devil had given her a profound and uncanny ability to essentially read people's hearts, but only the negative stuff, only the trashy stuff in their life. Or, so for example, she would go to a stranger and say, your wife is cheating on you, and she's cheating on you with a guy named Pete. And guess what? It was true, right? So there was a sin happening, and that sin is public domain insofar as the demons are concerned, and they can disseminate it with whomever they want, because when you're in a state of sin, you belong to them, right? You're theirs. So and everything that's yours is theirs. So what would be so wrong about this happening? So obviously there was an unfaithfulness happening, which is wrong, and wrong objectively and wrong in anybody's book. But to communicate that to somebody, you don't have the right to do that, especially when it's that knowledge is being, you're obtaining it through occult means, and you know that you are. So that communication, insofar as the devil is concerned, insofar as the cause of that knowledge is concerned, is not helping the individual.
So why did this particular individual reach out to you for help then?
Because she had incredible diabolical attacks happening in her home. Her health was deteriorating. She had this incredibly ugly rash all over her body. She was barely able to sleep because she'd be stirred awake. There were noises, growlings, howls, train horns sounding in her home all through the night, all through the day. And yet she wasn't willing to settle down. She wasn't willing to set aside these extraordinary gifts that she was given.
So do you meet with her and interview her and then and see for yourself that these abilities are being given her? And
right.
I see.
Yeah. So the fact, if I recall, there had already been a priest or two that were there, and they themselves had witnessed strange diabolical phenomena within the place, whatever it was, and I can't recall what it was, but so the last one kicked it to me, and he said, "Look, I was there, and I can vouch for this." So okay, then I don't need to do that first layer of investigating, but I want to meet with her. And where are you at, Mrs., with your walk with the Lord? Well, you're not walking with him. Okay. Well, are you ready to do that? Well, yeah. And everybody is going to say yes. Right? Okay. So we need to find out, why is this happening? And you tell me, Mrs., why is this happening? Well, I don't know. Most people are going to say, I don't know, when they well know. They well know. But the shame, the embarrassment, because now you're in front of the doctor, right? Or the principal, if you will, whatever analogy you want. And there's going to be some uncomfortableness in talking about what they did. And the point is that I don't do magic. I represent Christ and his church. So I'm fresh out of magic. You know, I never wanted to be a magician. I just, it's never something I ever wanted to do. And I still don't do it. And I couldn't care less for it. But I do bring the gospel, and I bring the light of Christ and grace. And if that's what you want, hey, I will be your best friend. If that is not what you want, God bless you.
So how did you part ways with this woman then, if she wasn't willing to repent of something?
So, I mean, you work with her until, if and when you reach a point where you say, okay, this is just not going anywhere. So she has not hit rock bottom enough, or is not willing to lay aside that gift that she shouldn't have, right? Frodo is not willing to give up the ring that he shouldn't have. And that's at the heart of it. Right? You have something that others don't have, and it gives you a power. It's exhilarating. She had come to define herself by this. She didn't know what else to do. She didn't know how to be a human being apart from knowing the seedy and the dirty things in people's lives. Knowing, being able to, tell people, yeah, your lost wallet is here. Like, not every total thing was negative, but it was just enough to hook you. It was the worm on the hook that would sink you in, and she loved to just control people. And so at a certain point, I'm not, I can't get anywhere with you.
So do you think fortune tellers who are able to do something like that's actually supernatural, if there be such people,
Sure.
These are gifts from the demonic, gifts, quote unquote, or?
So if you're doing an act of the occult, if you're engaging in the occult, by definition, that is a violation of the first commandment, right? And so as an exorcist, the most common ways that people get possessed is through that, is dabbling in the occult, which is a violation of the first commandment. And how is it? How is it a violation? Because when you participate in the occult, you are usurping the natural limits that God has placed in reality, right? So going to a fortune teller, well, the future is not available to us. You're trying to usurp that. Putting a curse on somebody, well, you maybe can't physically beat them up, or maybe that's just too messy. It's too illegal, but you'll sacrifice a chicken and take its head and its blood and whatever form of curse you want. And there's a whole bunch of them, right? And lots of nasty ones, and each one will be nastier than the next. You can inflict that on somebody. And so now you've usurped a boundary that God has placed there. So in doing that, in violating that, you are imitating the rebellion of the devil. You are one of his own, right? You are raging to God and saying, no, I will not obey. I will not respect your boundary. So what could be what could be better fodder than a demon picking up the deed of you or to you than through that action? Mm-hmm. The second most common way that people get demons is through sexual sin. And why is that? Because the sexual faculty is the most beautiful faculty that we have in humans, in the sense that it is through that faculty that we participate with God in creation. So that beauty, like imagine the audacity that God would use mortals to bring about immortal souls. It's just amazing, right? I mean, if that doesn't spell of the meekness of God, what doesn't? What does? So I walked, just a quick story. I had my son sleeping on the floor in our bedroom recently, and I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I walked back and I just looked at him and I admired how beautiful he is. And I said out loud, I made that, you know? And in a sense, that's true. I'm participating with God for this beautiful little immortal soul. Yeah. You absolutely did, right? So because it's so beautiful, right, the devil's going to be all over it. He's going to mar it in any way, in every way he can. And the appetite too, the sexual appetite, became the most wounded at our fall, right? The fall of humans. And so that, humans have a penchant for, not every human, but humans as a whole, the species of humanity has a penchant for every sexual deviation and aberration. And so the devil's going to be awful proud of that, right? And he's going to stroke that wound. He's going to pick at it. He's going to manipulate it to get you to desire what really at heart is ugly, but it becomes beautiful to you. Mm. And that perversion is demonic. It's absolutely demonic. Those are the two ways. They're not the only ways, but they're the two most common ways that people get demons.
So I can imagine people watching right now, and they may have had experience with the occult, many people, but I would say many more have had an experience with sexual perversion, being raised in a pornified culture, being exposed to pornography at a young age, maybe fornicating, committing adultery, and these sorts of things. How does this not just terrify everybody watching who's engaged in at least one sexual sin and make them unnecessarily, scrupulous, or that maybe they've got a demon or something, when that might not at all be the case? Like, maybe what you're saying is unhelpful for a lot of people.
Might. I mean, you may not have a demon inside you. You may not have you may not be possessed. You may not be heavily oppressed, but they won't be far from you. They will have their sights set on that appetite of yours. There's nature. Not everything is purely demonic. Our nature itself is broken, and our nature craves at times, through times of loneliness, stress. When we're not our best, it craves that which we shouldn't have. But the devil is really good at provoking that, and is really interested in provoking that. And if he can lead you into an addiction, he's going to do so.
Have you ever encountered someone who is, I don't know, mental problems? Is that the best way to describe this? I don't mean to be unsympathetic here, but have you encountered somebody who was mad? Let's just use even more of a pejorative term for the sake of just clarity. And then they expressed to you stuff was taking place in their house. I mean, surely it's possible that someone can be mad and that stuff is taking place in their house that's legitimate, right? Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely, right? So the rite of exorcism calls for, in what's called the prenotanda, in the rules, right? In chapter 1, the rules for engagement are listed. And among them are, people need to be evaluated for psychological issues. Now, oftentimes that gets misinterpreted by people, and they go, well, like, the shrink, he found something wrong with it. This person is a schizophrenic, and this person is this, and this person is that. What does that have to do with the devil? Though people with mental illness can also be oppressed by the devil. It's not an either or. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is, what do we do in evaluating such a situation? Well, we listen to the evidence, and then we test for the presence of evil. There are a number of ways in which you do that.
Please tell me how.
It's not really difficult.
Okay.
So I'll give you...
I'd like to get to exorcism eventually. I'd like to stay on the level of infestation and oppression, if that's okay.
Sure.
So maybe like signs that are the way in which you detect for evil.
Sure. So I'll give you an example that, someone came in one time, and of course, like all I know initially is that there is a claim that that a demon is harassing person X. And so this individual came in, and he was professional, middle-aged, well-educated man, ran a successful business, and he came in stating that he had this diabolical oppression happening with him, especially at night, but certainly throughout his house, and he would get a nausea anytime he attempted to do anything spiritual. So to pick up the Bible, even to look at a holy picture, he would have this urge to throw up. Okay, so I sit down with him, and I'm talking with him. Now, I've arranged at a set time a person next door and that he has not seen and that he is not aware of, but I've arranged at 1:52 p.m. I'm going to be with this individual, and at that point, you are going to start praying against any and every evil in him. Right? So he doesn't know this.
This is in your office, is it? Or?
This is in my office, but the person is in the next office over.
Okay.
Right? So the person I have praying. Boom. I'm watching the clock, and we're just talking about whatever. And I'm observing. And all of a sudden, is there a change in behavior? Is there an agitation? Is there a change in his mood? Does he become tense? Well, he closed his eyes and flopped over at 1:52. So bingo, we have something.
Yeah.
So there's enough evidence. There's ample evidence that there's something here that's evil. And so that gets noted, and then we move on straight to prayer. Like, I'm going to pray over this guy now, and I'm going to test that experience. And sure enough, it went up. Now, ironically, this man is a professional. This man is well educated and so forth, but he was also schizophrenic. Okay. Right. And he had evil. So here you have these three elements here that depending on, some people, unfortunately, some non-experts who they just, if he didn't have a degree, well, this is an uneducated person who has a wild imagination through watching movies and so forth. Or, this person has all this person needs is a shrink. And, and I'm sorry to admit, for the last, 60, 70 years, shrinks became God in many circles of the church, right? Like the testimony, the opinion of a psychiatrist became everything. All problems were chalked up to dysfunctional thinking, in many circles.
Is that because many people in the church ceased believing?
I think they ceased believing in the supernatural.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
They ceased believing in the supernatural. Like God, well, obviously God is supernatural, but anything else, it became, it's God and then just bad thinking. But you know what? If you remove everything else, none of our theology makes sense. If there is only God and humans, right, and then animals below us and whatever, but if there are no angels, no demons, none of reality makes sense. Why? Because we're in this struggle and this battle for what? God places us in a situation. If we have no supernatural enemy, then why does reality behave as if there is? Why would he allow us to have this interpretation? Why would his very word contain this? Why would his saints for 2,000 years have disseminated this reality if that weren't the case? So if all of a sudden you have an interpretation of reality, of the church and of human existence that is at variance with everything that has gone before us, you need to throw out that idea. Well,
I'm wondering what other tests are. Like, what would happen if you were to, say, bring an unconsecrated host before somebody possessed and a consecrated?
I would never do that.
Why not?
It's very icky when you start playing around with hosts, pseudo hosts, and that kind of thing. Same
thing with water, holy water.
I don't need to do that.
Okay.
No, holy water would be different.
Okay.
So you have a couple glasses there on your shelf, and So one situation I remember, there was a firefighter who was allegedly possessed. And he came and he had manifested at a church down the street. And then that church, he was there with his family. His family drove him over to ours. And so I met him at the door, and I just remember he was an enormous hulking man. And I thought, gosh, if he does have a demon and he gets violent, or even if he doesn't have a demon and he gets violent, this is going to be really bad. Like there's no stopping him. And so I bring him into my office, and I sit him down at a table, and I'm just chatting with him loosely for a couple of minutes. You know, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And so forth. And, you know, what brought you here today? And tell me what happened. And so he's telling me the account. And I say, okay, just keep talking. And I go over to the shelves, and I bring over a stack of books, and I put them on the table with the spines kind of turned towards him. So I'm controlling his eyes. I know that he's going to be scanning the spines, and some of those books are going to be spiritual. They're going to be, you know, St. John of the Cross's complete works, biography of a saint or two. But then random books like the Baltimore Orioles yearbook for 2012, how to drywall your basement. And so why am I doing that? Why do I bring those kinds of books and mix them in? Because then I'm controlling his thought as well, right? He's going to be saying, what on earth is this priest doing? And that's going to provoke even more of a curiosity for the next stack. So I'm controlling the eyes again, right? And so I keep doing that, and then I walk behind him and I go get a stack, but
he's not asking what you're doing at this point?
No, I'm just, if he does, and I just redirect him back to, so please keep going. Please, I know I'm listening with full concentration. Mm-hmm. Please keep going. And so I'll have a glass half filled with water, and it looks like I just left a glass on the shelf, but it'll be holy water. And so I dip the tip of my finger in. So I just took a drop, literally a drop. And as I'm walking behind him, I fling it on his clothing. Right? So there is no human way he would know what just happened. He shot up out of that chair and started hissing. And I remember...
Wait, sorry, started hissing?
He started hissing. So right when I was behind him, he shot out of the chair, and he arced his head backwards so that our faces were parallel to each other.
How's that even humanly possible?
But his was upset. I don't know.
It's not.
But it gets worse. His teeth seemed to sprout a couple of, like his canine teeth. So he was hissing like a cat, and his face took on the demeanor of a cat. Now, did his teeth actually grow? I saw his teeth as fangs that were 2 inches long. Did that actually happen? No. The devil can manipulate light. He can cause an illusion, and that's what it was. But that was a sign that the devil is there. So, all right, we fulfilled, we did our due diligence. We've established that something beyond the natural is here. Something in the realm of the
How did you recover from... I know you say you're not easily afraid, but I think I would have soiled myself and excused myself for a few minutes if that had...
What about the 37th time you see that? What about the 213th time? You're not going to put down your candy bar. Your cup of coffee isn't going to leave your hand. It just...
What did he think happened?
He was gone. Now the demon is there. There's a full-out manifestation. Right? So he's in a state of unconsciousness. He's there somewhere.
Did you watch his neck and head go back to normal? How did that?
What I saw was just a springing up so quickly that it was so fast I could not see the movement. That all of a sudden there's just this upside down head in front of me, hissing at me. But this is really good. Like a manifestation is good because it shows you just did something, i.e., the church just did something, i.e., God has just done something that was threatening to this enemy of God. He's flushed out. So you have pushed him out of hiding, and now he's out in the open. And so now there's a clash. And clash is good because the clash is what our Lord did with demons. So at the end of the day, it's really about Christ and his kingdom usurping its sovereignty over the kingdom of darkness. You're merely an agent. All you're doing is applying the basic principles of that the church has given you. You stand your ground and you assert the authority that God has given you.
When people manifest like that, do they have a conscious experience of that manifestation, or is it as if they fell asleep and something else has taken over?
So this gentleman had no knowledge, no awareness of having sprung like that. So in that moment, he is suppressed. So he was possessed, proven by the fact that he had no conscious memory of it. Now, the demon, in the course of our clash then, in the course of the subsequent exorcism, is at times going to retreat in order to get a reprieve, because it's horrifically painful for the demon to be subject to the prayers. And so he would come back, right? And he was groggy and in a kind of state of sleep. And so what I said to him is, look, you need to tell this thing to get out. You need to fight. And even when the demon began to manifest, I just kept always saying to him, I know you're in there and I know you can hear me at some level, and I'm commanding that the demon allow these words to go through. You need to fight from the inside. You need to say to him, get out of me. I don't want you. I choose Jesus. And so in the end, it was, he was cooperating in every way. And I hand it to him. He had been possessed for a long time, since he was a young child. But he had had enough. Like, he really had enough, and he was ready now to work. So many people, most people, even if they have an evil spirit at some level harassing them, they think it's, exorcism is like going to the hair salon. You sit there and you just relax. And again,
the priest does the work.
I don't do magic. I am not a magician. So I will help you rescind rights. Right? I will help. I know where you need to walk. And I will show you where you need to do it. And I will tell you when you need to exert yourself. And I will help you. I will help you. The church will help you. But this has to be an active, you are an active participant. And without your active participation, you're just not going to be liberated.
So, you said the first incident was you as a deacon, and then presumably you got ordained a year or so later. Mm-hmm. So has this been a part of your priesthood from the beginning and throughout, or have you taken more of a role as an exorcist over the last few years? Or
no, it was all throughout.
Okay,
it was all throughout. And
do you have to be sort of deputized by the bishop, or
whatever diocese you are conducting an exorcism in, you need to be deputized by that bishop. For example, my U.S. office is in the Archdiocese of Detroit. I am not the exorcist for Detroit. I am not even one of them. Mm-hmm. Why? Because that's not the purpose why I'm there. But I do have faculties in different dioceses, and where I have cases that are ongoing, where I have the permission of the local bishop to perform this ministry there.
I recently interviewed a lady named Vespa Stamper who was a witch and converted to Christianity. It's a very powerful story. But the night before, I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't sleep, and I was extremely depressed and oppressed out of nowhere and had no idea what was happening, didn't even connect it to the interview the next day. But it was so suffocating that I woke my wife up and asked her to pray for me, and she did. And the next morning I spoke with Vesper, and we both experienced something very similar, and even after the fact, right? So the point is, I know that when I do an interview like that or like this, it's going to make the demons not thrilled. Right. I can't imagine what it's like being you, who's actually, in the name of Jesus, of course, commanding demons to flee. What kind of spiritual warfare do you undergo, and is it any greater than what the average Catholic undergoes?
Look, I can speak for myself. I can't speak for my colleagues. I have to, I would not say that I'm attacked more than the average person would be, usually, with some exceptions. I did have a case I took on years ago, and that case is ongoing. So an exorcism can last, the average exorcism lasts about a year and a half, and that's with an exorcism occurring once a week. So 75 sessions, let's say, is the average length. But some of them can go on far longer than that. But one particular case I took on, my phone would ring through the night. So even if the phone was powered down, powered off, it would power on. It would ring through the night, and it would ring from a phone number that really doesn't exist. Even the area code wouldn't exist. You look up the area code, and there's no such assigned area code. But that only happened, I remember, for about a few weeks, and then that was it. It was only when that case started. I do remember one day, and I've never had a day like this. I had 3 sessions during that day, and I was giving a talk at a parish in the evening. And as I was heading to that, I was driving there, the radio in my car started, and it went to an ungodly volume that was far louder than what the dial would turn it to, and I couldn't shut it off. And there was nothing I could do to this radio to get it to shut off. The windshield then fogged up. Now, this was a warm summer day, so there was no reason for that to occur, but it did. Such that it became, oh my gosh, like I can't see out my window. And so I rolled down my window and I put my head out, and just in time to avoid hitting a guardrail. When I got to that parish, I had a projector. I was utilizing a slideshow that evening. My projector worked for about 30 seconds and then died. So I had a backup. I hooked up the backup. It worked for less time and then died. The parish had one, so they go get it. And again, worked for about 30 seconds and then died. That was, I would say, the worst day. I have had colleagues of mine, priest friends who are exorcists, who have had way more spiritual attack. And some have been physically attacked. I never have. Some have, a good friend of mine was tripped. He had terrible damage done to his Achilles tendon. And then at his next session, when he was well enough to conduct one, the fall happened just after Easter. And the first thing the demon said to him was, "Did you like our Easter present, Father?" I've never had anything like that. I don't want to. Mm-hmm. I have been physically attacked. I've been physically hit. I've been hit really, really hard numerous times.
By people you're praying with, or?
By the possessed.
Yeah.
But I've never been, I've participated in exorcism with a friend, with a priest friend. So we will often, if we can, if there's a particular heavy case, right, I may ask you, me, an exorcist, may ask you, a fellow exorcist, would you mind coming in that day? Are you able to come? And so, and I've been there where a friend of mine is being picked up by a petite woman and being held, 2 feet into the air, like his feet are dangling. And I grab her arm, and it's like grabbing a cement column. This 105-pound, 110-pound woman is hoisting this very large man. And it's only when I utter a prayer, then, wow. And he had, by that point, was already red. So I never saw him being picked up. So I heard in the room the people kind of gasping, and I was reaching for a relic of a saint to apply. And then I hear the gasping, and I look at them, and then I look at her, and then I see this arm, and then I look at him, and by that time, he was already turning red. I say he had been in the air enough time. There was no breathing going on.
She had him by the throat?
She had him by the throat. So I've never been picked up. I have been hit very hard. I was hit so hard that I needed 2 surgeries to repair my skull. What
happened in that situation? How were you hit? What was the circumstances?
I was hit in the face. I was hit just over here, just beneath the eye, and it broke my skull, and I didn't know that it did.
Wow.
So I was knocked out. I saw stars. It took me a few minutes to recover and figure out where I was, and then I thought, there was the pain wore off after maybe 10 minutes or so, and I thought, okay, well, I'm good to go. And then, subsequently there was just an enormous amount of problems that have an infection and so forth, and so they went in and had to do particularly of the sinus structure had to be rerouted and so forth.
He hit you with his hand or with something?
With the head.
Okay. Wow. Is it comforting?
Like lightning fast.
Is it comforting talking to other exorcists?
We don't really talk about this stuff. Like what we talk about. You might present a case that is a conundrum. So I have not yet been able to flush out the demon, or I've not been able to find the main possessing demon. I'm stuck with this one, and this particular stubborn, belligerent demon says, I don't have to leave because I have the right to be here because of something about which I will not tell you. And so, he'll present the cases, the details of the case, and like, okay, and you're listening to that, and you're processing, and you also have one ear to God. Is he saying something to me right now? You're discerning. You all 18 antenna are up, and you're absorbing as much as you can, and then, this is how I would proceed, Father. I would do something like this. But if it's interesting enough, you know what? I might like to come if you'd like to have me come, and I'd like to see this behavior that you're talking about, and see if we can't do something about it.
And then, do you need permission from the possessed?
Absolutely, you do. Yeah. Sure, yeah. From the possessed or the bishop?
Well, both.
Well, the possessed, do you need permission? The possessed, if the possessed is receiving exorcism, he or she has already given permission, or at least the family has. The family who has custody.
Is there documents they have to sign?
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Yeah. You will sign a release and a waiver, and you are stating, I'm coming here of my own accord, and I'm requesting the ministry of the church because I believe of this, and the exorcist, after having made his diagnosis, is in agreement with the fact that you are possessed, and so you're authorizing the church's ministry of exorcism to be done upon you. And if the person is not free enough to be able to do it, that the husband is, the wife is, the somebody is, and obviously you always have those people in the room. You want family members in the room always, but you also want your own people and your own advocates, so that if it comes to it, that you have many people that can give a testimony as to what occurred in the room.
Have you ever had a demon reveal your own sins and speak them out loud to shame you, or have you heard of that happening?
Sure, I've heard of it happening. When you confess your sins sacramentally, they cease to exist. They don't
beautiful thought.
Exist after that. So there is no disclosure on the part of a demon because they don't exist in reality. But if you are stupid enough as a priest to go and conduct an exorcism and you have mortal sin, then the demon can easily jump into you, because really, what's happening there? Well, you already belong to him, and you're coming in and you're giving him orders. He's your master, right? So now the state of things is much worse than what it was. When this person was possessed and you weren't, as the priest, things were really bad. Now that you're both possessed, oh my God, it's off the charts bad. You're the Easter egg that he really wanted. So, and that would be a good point to explain right now. Why is mortal sin such a debilitating thing? Because, well, it begins with the fall of Adam and Eve. When you were conceived inside your womb, your children, you have 4 children. When they were conceived inside their mother's womb, there were 3 people involved in their making, right? There was dad, there was mom, and you each provided the biological material for life. When that biological material came together and the condition for life was just right, God infused a soul. So there were 3 involved in your making, and at the moment of that infusion, a human being came to be, right? But at the moment that human being came to be, the penalty for the sin of Adam came and met him. He was subject to it immediately. So this is what I call I call that the original injustice. So you're brought into the world through an act of love that involved three persons. Three persons cooperated, right? A divine person and two human beings to bring about new life. And yet, this penalty you became subject to. So in that moment, your children did not belong to God. The moment they came to be inside their mother's womb, they didn't belong to God, and they didn't belong to you or your wife. They belonged to the devil. That is original injustice. And so they continued to belong to the devil until their baptism. Right? So your baptism, my baptism, changed our original owner. Right? The devil, we ceased to belong to the devil. Right? So people today, they'll wait 2 years to baptize their children. They'll wait 8 years. I mean, sometimes they're so heavy, I can't even pick them up to the font, right? I can't, we got to get them a stand to stand on, right? They're just too heavy to manipulate. The kids are too heavy. But in that moment, the devil ceased to be their owner. God the Father became their father, their owner. Christ became their Savior. The Holy Spirit became their sanctifier. They received an entire family of saints in heaven. The gifts of the Spirit were infused within them. Right? So, and they had the right to enter into heaven upon leaving this earth. And they gained the right to have the dignity of a sonship or a daughterhood with God. They gained the right for that. Like the dignity that comes forward at a baptism is immense. Well, that continues until the person's first mortal sin. And then the effects of baptism are undone. The baptism itself is not undone. It doesn't have to be repeated. But you've now evicted the Holy Spirit from within you. And guess what? You cease to belong to your original owner. And so until you reconcile with God sacramentally, that state remains. Right? You continue to belong to your original owner, the devil. So in the Prenotanda in chapter 1, in the rite of exorcism, a priest is always advised, he's ordered to go to confession before any and every exorcism. And of course we do. I mean, whether we need it or not, we do. Whether you're conscious of grave sin or not, you do. I mean, we may not have specific violations of the commandments, but we may have a heart that was hardened this week in this way and that way, and I judged that person. I was short to my mother on the phone. Whatever. But you clean yourself in order to go and battle the Prince of Darkness, who then, if he is not able to lay hold of anything on you, well, it is to your benefit.
What's more powerful, an exorcism or a sacramental confession?
One confession is worth more than 1,000 exorcisms. We do exorcism only to get the person into the sacramental life of the church, right? That's really the source of health. The 7 sacraments are the 7 ways Jesus Christ left to heal the world. They are the way that we receive God's very divinity within us. And to use the language of the Eastern Church, our Eastern brothers, they are the way by which we are divinized. Right? Prayer divinizes us, sure. Our good works, charitable works, sacrificing, penance, but nothing divinizes us like the 7 sacraments.
Has there been, I imagine there has been a steep decline in baptisms over the last 10, 20 years in North America? And do you think that's responsible for the increase in demonic activity, if there has been such an increase?
Well, that's a symptom of the state of things. And that symptom is that the state of things is a disillusionment with religion and an embrace of paganization. But the thing is, nature abhors a vacuum. We are spiritual beings, and we can't not be spiritual. And so with an abandonment of traditional Christianity, there has come along a plethora of aberrant spiritual practices, right? Women go down to the spa to go, spend an afternoon in the spa. They're offered a Reiki treatment, right? And what's a Reiki treatment? Well, we're going to raise your energy level. Well, this is occult, right? This is no basis in science. And they will try to convince you that there is. Well, we're going to use particular crystals, or this person is a trained and licensed, down the street in Michigan is one of the great, where I live, is one of the great training offices of Reiki, right, in North America. So they will use pseudo-scientific language to make it look like this is a rational, sensible thing. But when, in actual fact, this is an act of the occult. But the abandonment of religion, right? So the abandonment of Christianity and a Christian worldview, right? That gave you not just a relationship with God, but a moral compass, a spiritual compass. That you were catechized, you were formed in school, you were formed by your parents, your neighbors, and so forth. That you knew how to conduct, and there were things that, like, you know what, that's a wicked thing. I've been taught about that. I am not going to participate in it. Kids today don't have that, right? Go on Amazon, type in Ouija board, right? See all the hits that come up. Start reading some of the comments. You have parents getting this for their kids, grandparents getting these games for their grandkids, saying, I wanted to spook them out and tie them up for the night during their sleepover, and this thing was hours of fun for them. And they were saying they were contacting with genuine spirits. And then
someone's watching right now who has a Ouija board or tarot cards. What do they do with them?
Burn them. Get rid of them. Go to confession. Confess your sins to the Lord. Amend your life. Right? Get rid of the sin out of your life. Then walk with the Lord. You walk with the Lord, you obtain his blessing, his benefit. You don't walk with him, you don't. And that's just the way it is.
I've heard that the demons are particularly frightened of the Theotokos.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Mother of God is, and more women get possessed than men, and by far.
Interesting. I had that assumption. I also have the assumption, which might be incorrect, that more women are using tarot cards than men. But I don't know if that's true.
In my experience, it absolutely is true. Men will do other things in terms of the occult, but it really comes down to how men and women are made up. Men will commit more sexual sins than women. Women have a penchant for manipulation, right? When a woman in her weakness, right, a woman's ugliness will often show up in a desire to manipulate,
right,
and control, and behind the scenes,
and because she can't like men manipulate by being physically violent, perhaps, but a woman can't do that, and so has to manipulate emotionally.
That's right. That's right. Right. So yeah, there's the demon that came in through the tarot cards. But then there's the turning towards the tarot cards and what was beneath that, right? That also has to be treated, right? And then beyond that, more primal to that is, where are you at in your life? Donna, why do you feel about yourself the way you do? That has to be treated. So it's not just about the use of the tarot card. It's what were the conditions that led to that coming about, right? Like, you need some pastoral care, right? The demons are usually a very small part of this ministry. A bigger part of the ministry is getting you into a place of health. And that involves getting an assessment of you. Like, where are you at? Learning about you. Why do you function the way you do? Why are you seeking the kinds of things you seek? What has led to that? So that is far more time consuming, right? Is putting somebody into a place where they can obtain healing and life. It's one thing to get rid of the demons. It's another thing to keep them out. So if you don't do that pastoral care, guess what? They're going to go back out with that weakness, and they don't know a different way to act. And so they're going to be acting the way that they know how to act. And they might be well-intentioned as you or I are, but they don't know a better way to act. Guess what? They're in trouble again. And now they're back in front of you. They need an exorcist again. So to protect your work, there has to be a tending of the sheep, right? When I was in Texas, it was wonderful because, gosh, we had, I was at a church where a lot of people, most people in that church had walked away from very hard living in their lives. A lot of the congregation, and these were people on fire for Jesus. They were wonderful, beautiful people. Many of them had criminal records. Many of them were drug dealers, gangbangers, and reformed. But, to do this ministry, they were great because I could call up a couple and say, look, I have this person here. I have Susie here. And Susie is in a bad place and I'm helping her get to a better place, but she needs some friends. Can you and Bert pick her up every Tuesday night, take her to a movie, right? Take her to dinner afterwards. And then I would call up a different couple. Thursdays, can you make sure that she goes shopping, right? Take her shopping with you. Then on the week, always somebody would be there to pick her up for church on Sunday. And shortly after, as long as you weren't outright manifesting in the church, you were given a job immediately. So Susie has a job, even if it's just slinging coffee. So she feels important. I'm contributing here to this parish community. Now, you know what? She's learning what love is. She's learning what redemption is. She's seeing people who are on fire. She's seeing people maybe for the first time in her life, they're not taking advantage of me. And they don't want something from me. Right? They're just offering. So that would be equal to everything in terms of healing. I just came from hell. I want to live like these people, right? And that was so healthy. It was so healing.
Have you ever encountered a person who's become possessed who wasn't in mortal sin? Is that a possibility?
Yes. Through inheritance, right? Through a covenant that was made along the family line. Now, it took a very strong covenant that was made. But so let me go back a little bit, and then I'll answer your question. So demons live in wounds, right? So as an exorcist, people come to you, and you need to assess, the truth of what they're saying and so forth. And okay, if it's true, now you've got to examine them. Where are the wounds in their lives? And sure enough, it was through one of these, or maybe more than one, by which the devil entered. So wounds have two sources. Trauma. Right? Timmy and Joey are playing catch on the street. Timmy throws the ball far above Joey's head. He goes running after it. Car slams into him, knocks his head clean off his body. Timmy sees this. His world is completely different. Right? He threw the ball. It's his fault. Right? He called on Joey's door that morning. Joey didn't want to come out because he had homework, but he teased him. Timmy teased him. He teased him. You're a little girl. You're a wuss. You're a suck. Come on out and play catch. So now that hurt, that shame, that guilt, that pain, the devil's going to be all over that to manipulate him. Right? If he doesn't get some kind of truth spoken to him here now, right? God's truth, then he as the twig is bent, so grows the tree. Right? The devil is going to want to manipulate that, and nature itself is also broken too. And both of those factors working against him are going to create conditions by which it's easy to pick up demons. How? Because what trauma does is it distorts your view of reality. It causes you to believe a lie. What would be the lie that Timmy encounters here? Well, there's no redemption for me, right? Regardless of whether he had a theological view or not, his theological view has changed. Right? Does God exist? If he does, why didn't he stop this? Right? Death is even more powerful than God. Nobody can bring back Joey. He's gone. Right? So the world is not a safe place. It's a horrible place where little kids playing catch can have something this horrific happen. Right? So there's lots of room for distortion of belief there. The second type of wound is sin. And sin has three species. Right? So personal direct sin. Right? You do a sin, and it doesn't even have to be a mortal sin necessarily. You played with a Ouija board. You didn't know what you were doing. Like the movie The Exorcist is based on a case where a little kid was invited to sit alongside his aunt as she played with a Ouija board. Guess what? That night he became possessed. He didn't willingly choose. He didn't say to a demon, I hereby give myself to you and I summon you into me. You don't need that. But guess what? He opened the wrong door at the wrong time. And there was something standing behind that door. So I encounter people all the time and say, well, I don't give the devil authority to have any jurisdiction or issue over me. Right? But you're viewing this the wrong way. If somebody knocks at your door and you may not have delegated any permission for the person on the other side to do you or your family members harm. But guess what? You open the door, there's somebody standing there with a knife. Kills you, kills your family members. What permission you gave is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Spiritually, it's the same thing. You open the wrong door. You open the wrong door. And now you're subject to the consequences. Personal sin. Then generational sin. Right? And this is one that causes no small controversy among Christian churches, in particular some Protestant churches, because they don't acknowledge it at all. But look, our entire faith is based upon generational sin. What is original sin if not generational sin? Right? You had David and Bathsheba sinned. Well, David sinned immensely, and the product of their union was a child. The child died. The scriptures are very clear because of the sin that David did, not just with Bathsheba, but by killing her husband. Right? Uriah was destroyed at the command of David. Right. So the sin was not the child's, but the punishment for the sin was visited on the child by the Lord.
Right. So if you want to say that generational sin does not exist, you have to explain that somehow.
You're wrong. Right. And then you have, well, the Pharaoh. So he puts a curse upon Moses, utters a curse, and what happens? Well, every firstborn of the land is struck dead that night during the first Passover. Right? Every firstborn. None of the firstborn sinned. Right? Pharaoh sinned, but the effect of the sin was visited upon them. Right? When David counted, when he took the census against the will of the Lord. Right? Then he was given 3 options, right? Pick your punishment, A, B, or C. Right? And the punishment he picked was for 3 days pestilence. Right? So all of a sudden, all the food in the land is eaten by locusts. And David says, Lord, it's not them. The sin was not theirs. It was mine. Right? Why are you punishing them? So there is such a thing as generational sin. I had a person one time who contacted me, and she had one of her brother-in-laws had just attempted suicide. She had 2 brothers that had committed suicide. Her father had committed suicide. And so she had 2 brother-in-laws that married 2 sisters. One of them had attempted suicide numerous times after he married the sister, never before. And the other one, who had married perhaps a year prior, he confessed that he had started since the wedding day to feel suicidal. Right? He had not yet attempted suicide. So I remember receiving this call from her, and she was rightly so hysterical. But I was out of state at the time. I wasn't available to help, but I said, look, when I come in, I will do so. I will help you. And shortly after I came in, I got a call from her again. Her sister took her life. Here's the kicker. Every suicide and every suicide attempt always happened on a Thursday. Always a Thursday. And when she told me that, man, we got a generational sin here. And I was never able to find out why a Thursday. But all I did was I led her through, and it was done in one session. Now I had this conversation with her maybe 10 years, 12 years ago, something like that. I called her several months ago And now I will follow up with people every now and again. And she said, you know what, Father, it was done after that one session. And that one session was I said, look, you're a member of this family, and I don't know why this is afflicting you, but it is. But, generational, the generations are a conduit that flow both ways. So as it comes down to you, so also what you do can go back up the other way. So you're going to speak now for your entire family, your entire bloodline, going all the way back to your first father, Adam and Eve. You're going to repeat after me. I claim the authority of my bloodline. Claim the authority of my bloodline. Lord, I invite you in and to heal any and every wound that is here. And so you just vicariously, you go after the spirit of suicide and every other sickness that is here. I don't want it here. I remove the authority it has from whatever source it was by which it came. I claim freedom. It all ended that day. Completely ended. So the third type of sin then is what I call transferred sin. Curses, hexes, spells, and that kind of thing, which are very real. And in fact, those at times are the most, in some sense, difficult to establish, because
you can't get the person to repent of something they haven't done.
Right. And who do you think might have cursed you? Well, it could be one of 453 people because they have that many enemies. Or it could be, I have no idea. Or it could be, it can vary by culture. So if you're dealing with a culture, with a person from with an ethnicity, where cursing is common, you can kind of start and begin there, and that can take a long time to identify a curse. But let's say you're with a culture that really doesn't have cursing, like the Irish, for example. But you might ask them, do you have any Masons in your family? Right, well, yeah, we do. My uncle was a Mason, but his father, who was my grandfather, he was also a Mason. Well, let's do a renunciation of that. Right? And boom, all of a sudden, what they're experiencing ceases.
What's the difference? You've talked about infestation. What's the difference between oppression and exorcism and any other isms I'm missing?
It depends on who you ask. So we each have our own, we have our own ways of categorizing, but and my way, which is not unlike what most others would do, but they're not necessarily equal from exorcist to exorcist. But when you're talking about possession, you're talking about that a demon, or more than one, has gained the juridical right to manifest from the inside out of the victim. So we talk about them being in the person, but there needs to be a little bit of an explanation for that. Demons are not located in space and time. They're not composed of matter. So they can't jump into someone because there's nothing to jump. All right? They're pure spirit. So they are not, and see, the difficulty with humans is we are hardwired to understand reality as delimited by space, right? We think of the elephant, we think of the sun, a star, a supernova, or whatever. Like, it occupies a certain amount of space. Demons don't, angels don't. So when they are inside somebody, what it means is they've gained the juridical right, the legal right, to manipulate that person from the inside, such that their body is not under their dominion anymore. It's under the demons. And he only allows them to function with their body according to his will. When he wants to allow them to function, they will. When he doesn't, they won't. So in the course of an exorcism, the demon's going to manifest because he's got to come to do what I call defend life and property. Right? When a priest starts praying, it's really dangerous for him. So he's going to come out and manifest. He wants to prevent the person from renouncing whatever happened. He wants to just shut that dialogue down. And he presents himself in his sovereignty. And so, of course, then most of what exorcism is praying. You're wounding the demon. You know, very rarely can you just go in and cast out a demon. If you're able to do that, it's because he had very little jurisdiction to begin with. But when they have a lot, right, then something has to be done from the inside out. So you weaken them enough over time that you gain enough access to the human being. You know, I need you. Do you repent? Do you choose to repent of this sin? Do you repent of anything and everything that is not of God in your life? But it may have also been inherited, right? They may not have had anything to do with it. And this is where you just have to jump and poke around from in place to place looking for a weak point. And a lot of times you don't know where they are. Like you're in the dark kind of groping around, but you take kind of a prayer machine gun, if you will, and you shoot in some direction, and once in a while you hear, ow, okay, well we've hit something. So pursue that.
So you talked about 3 openings: sin, whether venial or mortal, inherited sin, and transferred sin. I mean, how is this? I could see this being an unhealthy thing to talk about, because I imagine everybody's like, well, then maybe I'm possessed.
Well, so are there signs of possession? Right? Is there evidence of it? And so we get these all the time. Father, I just would like to make an appointment with you. Just do an exorcism movie just so that I make sure I'm clean. Well, heavens no. Okay. We don't do root canals on healthy teeth, right? There has to be evidence that there's a problem. And there isn't enough of us. Like we have better things to do than to start ministering to healthy people.
So then you've mentioned a couple, like nausea around the sacred. What are some other signs that someone might be possessed?
Oh gosh. The losing of consciousness, blackout periods, right? So you may have just lost 2 days. You have no idea where you were 2 days. So now you wake up on the other side of town without a shirt, and you've got $4,000 in your pocket. You have no idea where they came from. You've got blood on you, and you're not sure if it's your own or not.
You've encountered this?
Oh, heavens, yes. That firefighter I talked about manifested as a cat, for example. You will have people, you know, it's funny, you know, God created what God created, creation, he created in a hierarchy. So you have the pure spirits, right? The angelic spirits from which the demons fell. You have humans, you have animals, and so forth. When a demon manifests, they often like to manifest as something lower than even the human, as an animal, as a pig, a donkey, a cow, or slithering like a snake.
Why do you think that is? Why not manifest as
it disgusts us.
Superior spiritual being, like an angel, even a fallen angel?
Because the animal thing is more scary for us, right? So, and all of a sudden, you might start praying with somebody, and they slip out of their chair, and they start slithering like a snake around the legs of the table.
Gosh!
So, and it looks like all of a sudden they've got no bones. And
so it looks more convincing than if I was to pretend to be a snake.
Oh heavens, yes, yeah. Even if a professional did it, who did that for a living, but it's not to say that all of a sudden the devil had the power to make their bones go soft. He doesn't have that. But the devil can bend light. He can cause an illusion. So you can look at that reality and absolutely fully believe that this happened, that the laws of nature were violated here. Well, they really weren't violated, but the appearance that they were violated, that took place. So
I'm not
there's
an
an old
exorcist.
Irish saying. There's an old Irish saying: believe none of what you hear, and only half of what you see. And that is good advice for when you're dealing with the devils.
Do you think it's also the demon's way of mocking the image of God within the possessed to make them act like an animal?
Yeah. To debase their dignity.
So we talk about the devil doing all of these things. It makes it sound like the devil is close to being